Hello there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and this is part 2 of our Fate Reforged set review, and today we're going to be looking at the blue cards. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one is Ascendant Surveyor, 2 blue, 3 colorless for a 2/2 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Ascendant Surveyor, or return target creature to its owner's hand. And this is pretty strong in limited. We talked a lot in the previous part when we looked at the white cards about evasion and how important evasion is going to be in this format and limited, based around what we've seen from cons and what we've seen so far from Fate Reforged. So it costs 5. It is expensive, but it's a 2/2 flyer, which can be a 3/3 flyer. You're going to pay for it, and it has the extra versatility of the fact that you could bounce a creature if need be. So very good, very good, and strong card for limited. Cloud Form, 2 blue, 1 colorless, an enchantment, and this is a cycle. Whenever Cloud Form enters the battlefield, it becomes an aura with enchant creature. Manifest the top card of your library and attach Cloud Form to it. Enchanted creature has flying and hexproof. So not quite as good as the white one. I don't think that has lifelink, but maybe not, because it does give you a little bit more protection for your flyer. So I still think it's a good card, though. It's going to be great to basically get a 2/2 flyer for 3, and the hexproof is an added bonus as well. So unlike most aura enchantments, you're not losing anything if this creature is destroyed in some way due to the fact you're pulling him off the top of your library. So very good card in limited. You're going to want to play these as well, or draft them pretty high, I think. Enhanced Awareness for 1 blue and 4 colorless. It's an instant. You get to draw 3 cards and discard a card. Drawing cards is always good. Discarding a card that you don't need can also be an advantage in this set with Delve. So this is pretty good. It's going to cost you 5, so it's going to be a little bit mid-game to late game that you're going to use this. But I do think between the fact that you can use it as an instant in a situation where you may have your back to the wall, or else you can just go ahead and draw basically 1 card and cycle, it's pretty decent. So again, I think it's another strong limited card for blue. Blue's had a lot of good limited cards, I think, that have come out in this set. Next one's Fascination, 2 blue and an X. Choose one. Each player draws X cards, or each player puts top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. A little reminiscent of some older cards from blue that had large draw abilities for both players, which is pretty cool, and have been known to be very powerful in the past. So you're drawing cards with the first option, but your opponent's also drawing cards. So you do want to make sure you have something to do with your cards that is going to hopefully end the game quickly before you suffer the crackback of whatever your opponent has drawn. So you do want to be careful with that first ability. The second ability is interesting too, though. Especially in a game of limited where most folks are playing 40 cards, milling becomes sort of a possibility, especially if you have a board stall. So very interesting, and also milling yourself with a delve strategy isn't necessarily a bad thing either. So not a card that's probably going to be in every limited deck, but there's definitely a lot of them that will play this, I think. Frostwalker, 1 blue and a colorless for a 4/1. When Frostwalker becomes the target of a spell or ability, just sacrifice it. And in this environment, 4/1, it's going to die to a morph in combat. It's not super aggressive, but it is going to take a morph out. It only costs 2, and we have seen before there are times where this particular type of card is a lot harder to get rid of than you think. And we've seen some real low casted cost creatures like this in the past that have come out, and sometimes you just win the game off these if your opponent can't deal with it. Your opponent has to have an answer for this card. Really strong, I think, limited card. Some people won't want to play it because of the drawback, but I think if you look at it, at worst case scenario, you get it out there, maybe you get 4 damage across, maybe you take out a creature. I think it's worth it to play it. You might not want multiples in your deck, but I think it's a good card. Guy Infiltrator, 1 blue and 2 colorless, and he's a 2/3. Guy Infiltrator can't be blocked as long as you control no other creatures, and when he deals combat damage to a player, exile him and the top card of your library in a face-down pile. Shuffle that pile, then manifest those cards. So basically, he can kind of keep doing this trick if you get the mana to flip him and your opponent can't deal with him. So very interesting. It allows you to use more and more of your deck for the manifest ability, and I like it. I think in limited, I think it's going to be another strong card. You know, the more we go through blue, I just feel like blue has definitely gotten the strength, at least in limited. Not seeing a lot of these cards that will translate too great into constructed formats, but from a limited point of view, a lot of these are very good. Guy Runemark, 1 blue and 2 colorless. Here's the first one that I don't love. It's an enchant creature. It gives your creature +2/+2, and if you control a red or white permanent, that creature also gets flying. It's just too conditional for the flying piece, and it costs 3, and it's real easy to get 2 for 1 with this card. So I'd steer clear of this one. Jeskai Sage, 1 blue and 1 colorless. It's a 1/1. When the creature dies, draw a card, and it also has the prowess ability. This is fantastic. This is a strong limited card. It's also, you're going to see this in standard easily, and this could become a standard staple. You're paying 2 for a 1/1 creature with prowess. So early on, you're going to get some effect off this creature. Then what's going to happen is later in the game, when it gets outmatched, he's going to die, and you're going to draw a card, and you lost nothing. So really, really strong. Really feel like this is pushed, and it looks subtle, but I think a lot of people will maybe miss how powerful this truly is. So really strong card here. Lotus Path to Jin, 1 blue and 3 colorless for a 2/3 flyer with prowess. You're paying that premium for flying and for prowess in Khans of Tarkir environment, and you are happy to do so. You're going to get a 2/3 flyer if nothing else, and you may even be able to get some bonus points off the prowess. So another good limited card. Meringue River Prowler, 1 blue, 2 colorless for a 2/1. He can't be blocked, and he can't block, and you may cast him from your graveyard as long as you control a black or green permanent. I like this. I like this in limited if you're playing Sultai or black or green, because it has the evasion of not being able to be blocked, and you can bring him back. So another strong card that can help you get through board stalls, and your opponent is again going to have to find answers for this, and maybe on more than one occasion. So I really like this as well. Mind Scour Dragon in blue, it just keeps coming. Now you get a 2 blue and 4 colorless flyer. And when he deals combat damage to an opponent, target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So you got a 4/4 flyer for 6. Absolutely, you're going to do this in limited. The extra ability is interesting because, yes, in limited, it's easier to mill folks out with smaller decks. However, there's also a Del strategy out there, and you actually might be helping your opponent by letting them mill. So interesting. There's a little bit of a double-edged sword to it, but you're going to play it. It's a 4/4 flyer, and if you're really doing that combat damage, I don't know if the mill effect is going to hurt your opponent that much, but as opposed to the actual damage hurting your opponent, but I think it's going to be a good limited card. It's not obviously going to be standard or anything you're going to see in other formats. Misfire Adept, 1 blue, 3 colorless, and he's a 3/3 with prowess. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature gains flying until end of turn. Another strong limited card, and you're paying 4 for a 3/3. That feels pretty good because of the prowess effect, and then the fact that on top of the prowess, when you cast a non-creature, you also can give him or another creature flying, and that evasion piece comes in. Really good card. Just really impressed with blue. Monastery Siege, blue and 2 colorless, and it's an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. If you choose Khans, at the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card, then discard a card. In Dragons, spells your opponents cast that target you or a permanent you control cost 2 more to cast. So I said in the first part of the set review, I'm not a huge fan of casting enchantments and passing the turn without benefit, but this cycle of enchantments is pretty pushed, and it is at their rare level. So here you're paying 3, and you get to loot every turn. Interesting, it's not a option, so sometimes you can get burned by that. But if you're playing a delve, a delve strategy especially, this is going to be good. And it's going to be good regardless. I would play this in my limited deck. And then you have the additional versatility that if you are up against a burn deck or something of that nature, you're going to make your opponent cast pay more to cast those cards. So pretty good.
Next card is Neutralizing Blast. It's 1 blue and a colorless for this instant, and it's counter target multicolored spell. And something like this just feels a little too conditional. You are in the Cons of Tarkir environment, so you know you're going to be seeing some large multicolored creatures. Having this in your hand, though, and your opponent's not playing that strategy, or you get beat by another strategy in their deck while this is sitting in your hand, isn't going to feel good. So it might be more of a sideboard limited card that you're going to go ahead and board in if you see some threats that make this card a little more useful. But you don't want to be losing to your opponent's Abzan White Weenie strategy while this is in your hand. That's not going to feel good. So I think basically is a card that's good to board in. Rakasha's Disdain, 1 blue and 2 colorless for an instant. Counter target spell unless his controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard. And this counter spell feels a lot better to me, especially if you're playing a delve strategy. This is kind of a no-brainer. You're going to have cards or try to find ways to get cards into your graveyard. However, it's also that force spike ability where you might have 1 card in your graveyard, and that might be good enough to counter the spell early game. And then late game, if you have a lot of cards in your graveyard and you haven't hit your delve yet, here's your opportunity to buy yourself a little more time and perhaps counter something when your opponent has a little extra mana hanging around. So this is a better counter spell I'd be a little more apt to use compared to the last. Reality Shift, 1 blue, 1 colorless for this instant. Exile target creature. Its controller manifests the top card of his or her library. This reminds me a little bit of Afterlife, which was a card that originally was printed in Mirage, and it was a destroyed target creature, and the person that got a 1/1 flyer token into play. So this is similar. You're exiling a creature that basically you don't want to deal with, and you're taking the risk of getting the 2/2 manifest and having that not turn into something bigger. I think it's a good card though in limited because basically you're going to use this when you're out of options. It's not premium great removal like we were seeing in white, but this is blue and this is what you have. So it's a little more maybe of a tempo play, but if you have a big flyer coming at you that you can't deal with, you're going to want to have this. So pretty good limited card. Refocus, 1 blue and 1 colorless for this instant. Untap target creature and draw a card. It's pretty simple. Again, blue doesn't get a whole lot of removal, so this can sometimes be removal for blue. You go in with your big 4/4 flyer, they attack with a 3/3, and you have this combat trick to untap it and get rid of it. And you get to draw a card, so you don't have nothing to really lose. And you have the ability to just play this to draw a card if you need to cycle later. So it's a good card. I'd definitely play it in limited. Renowned Weaponsmith, 1 blue and 1 colorless. He's a 1/3, and you can tap him to add 2 mana to your mana pool, but you can only spend this mana to activate artifact spells or activated abilities of artifacts. He has a second ability where you pay blue and tap to search your library for a card named Heart Piercer Bow or Vial of Dragonfire. Reveal it and then put it into your hand and shuffle your library. So a couple things with him. First off, there isn't a real strong artifact strategy, at least so far in this environment. We'll see if that changes with Dragons of Tarkir. So you're probably not playing him for his first ability, and you're probably not playing him for his second ability. Heart Piercer Bow is a card from Khans of Tarkir, and it was not that good. Vial of Dragonfire will probably be coming from Dragons of Tarkir, and unless that's some great card that you're going to want to tutor for, I don't see him really having a home anywhere. Rite of Undoing, 1 blue and 4 colorless for this instant. Return target non-land permanent you control and target non-land permanent you don't control to their owner's hands. And you have Delve to take off some of the casting cost of this as well. For each card you exile from your graveyard while casting the spell, pays for 1 colorless mana. So great way to convert your cards in your graveyard to mana to make this a very cheap spell, potentially even just for a blue, and a pretty powerful effect, especially when you're only paying maybe 1 or 2 for it. You're returning a permanent your opponent controls to their hand that's non-land, and that's going to give you some tempo. Plus, you could potentially be protecting your creature, or reoccurring maybe a come into play effect, or at the very least just untapping your creature after an attack, as long as you have enough mana to recast. So this is a very good card. We've seen effects like this before, and they are big, and they can lead to some pretty swingy situations. So very strong limited card. You're going to want to play it in blue. Sagei Avengers, 2 blue and 4 colorless, and he has prowess. He's a 4/5, and whenever Sagei Avengers attacks, you may return target creature to its owner's hand if its power is less than Sagei Avengers' power. Fantastic. This is a limited bomb. You're going to play this if you're playing blue. You get the 4/5 big creature, you get the prowess effect, and on top of that, you get to start bouncing creatures and potentially some pretty big creatures. You're looking at anything that's smaller than 4 initially, but then you start prowessing a little bit, and that can become a lot bigger. So you can basically potentially bounce almost anything. So very good limited bomb for blue. Shifting Loyalties, 1 blue and 5 colorless, and it's a sorcery. Exchange control of 2 target permanents that share a card type. These cards, when they're good, they're great. When they're not good, they're just sitting in your hand looking for an opportunity, which sometimes is okay because it might mean you're already winning the game. This isn't the type of card that I would be drawn to throw into my deck every single time, but if I'm looking for playables, I may put it in there. It's something that you can go ahead and play around as well. So maybe you hold on to some of your better creatures and play smaller creatures to try to get some value out of the exchange or something along those lines. Unfortunately, sometimes playing around it can hurt you too, because it may be by the time you have a beneficial exchange, it might be too late and you might be overpowered. So, not to downplay it too much, like I said, when it's good, it can be really good. So, it doesn't hurt to have a one of in your deck, or maybe sideboard it in against certain matchups. But wouldn't be something I'd want more than one of, or that I'd be counting on too hard when I go into a limited game. Shu Yun, the Silent Tempest, for 1 blue and 2 colorless. He's a legendary creature, and he's 3/2 with prowess. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay 2 red or white. If you do, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. He's awesome. This is another limited bomb, definitely, where you have the 3/2 creature with prowess that you can go ahead and pump him up. And on top of that, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can then pay the additional mana, as long as you have those colors, to give target creature double strike. And if your non-creature spell you played, which would trigger prowess, is also an instant, then you can play this ability as an instant. And giving double strike instantly is a pretty big deal. That's a huge combat trick that can destroy creatures and end games in a lot of situations. So he's fantastic. Is there a home for him in Standard? There could be, if there's again aggressive strategies with a lot of small creatures, and he can be splashed in or worked in with the dual lands that are available. He could see some Standard play. I wouldn't be surprised. So very, very strong card. Saltai Skullkeeper, a blue and a colorless for a 2/1, and when he enters the battlefield, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Obviously, he's here to kind of fuel your delve strategies. He works well with the counterspell we saw earlier, that was based on how many creatures were in your graveyard. For 2 mana, I don't know if he's where I want to be, though. I feel like there's got to be a better play for 2 on turn 2, as opposed to just getting a 2/1. If he was a little bigger of a creature, or if he was like a 2/3 for 3 or something like that, I might feel a little better about using him. But as it stands now, I just feel like he's outmatched a little bit in this environment. Suppl form, 2 blue and 4 colorless for an instant. Return target creature to its owner's hand. You put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. And this is good. Another limited strong card. You get to use this as an instant. It's something to not overlook. So if it can be a combat trick, if your opponent's attacking, you can return the creature to your hand, copy that creature, and then block a different creature with it. So a lot of potential here to use as either a combat trick or simply clone something that you want multiples of, and you can power through and win the game. So very good card. Temporal Trespass, 3 blue and 8 colorless for the sorcery, and it has Delve, and take an extra turn after this one. Exile Temporal Trespass. So here's our Delve Time Walk. We obviously saw Delve Ancestral Recall that was in Kanzatark here, Treasure Cruise, right? So is this as good as Treasure Cruise? No, it's not. You have, first off, 3 blue you have to pay to get this to work. So even if you have 8 cards in your graveyard, you're still paying 3 blue to get this Time Walk ability. Time Walk is a powerful ability, though. It's more powerful when it has things that it can combo off of. There really isn't that in standard or in limited, obviously, to make it say broken or super powerful, but it's still a powerful effect, and you're gonna play it in your blue decks. Unless you're worried about the 3 blue. If blue's your splash color, obviously you're probably not going to play this. But in most cases, you're going to play this. You could potentially win a game with this if you're able to attack, untap, and attack again. It's a huge effect. It's strong. You're gonna go for it, and it doesn't always work out, but you're gonna go for it, and you should go for it. So very good card in limited. Torrent Elemental, 1 blue, 4 colorless, and this guy's just a bomb. It's another mythic, 3/5 flyer. Whenever he attacks, tap all creatures defending player controls. Then he's got an additional ability, pay 3 and then 2 black or green to put him from exile onto the battlefield tapped. Activate this ability only time you could cast a sorcery. So you play this guy. He's a flyer. He attacks, taps all your opponent's creatures. If you have other creatures or maybe a lot of small creatures, now here's your chance to just go in for the kill, basically. And he only costs 5. The effect of casting him from exile, it's a thing. I don't know how often that will come up as relevant. There'll be games when it does, but you have to obviously have those mana colors, and basically it's a little bit of a deterrent for your opponent who maybe only has an exile ability as an answer to him to maybe just go ahead and scoop at that point. So it's there, it exists, but the big ability is that first ability. So excellent card. Whisk Away, 1 blue and 2 colorless. It's an instant. Put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. And this is a classic tempo blue card. It's blue's sort of quasi removal, but not really. And it's decent, And you do want to be careful with tempo cards. You don't want to stock your deck with so many of them that all you're doing is a tempo game. You don't have any way of finishing the game, of course. So that happens sometimes. I've done that myself, but it is a strong card. You're going to use it in limited. Will of Naga, 2 blue and 4 colorless. It has the delve option and tap up to 2 target creatures. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step. This is a very powerful effect. It is an instant too. I want to call that out. And there was a card that was in the core sets for a couple years, a few years back. And now the name escapes me, but I want to say it cost 4, and it was basically this effect, and it was extremely powerful and limited. And now you're paying a little more, but you have the delve to offset it, and you could even be paying a little less than 4 for it. And this is a phenomenal effect. This again can win you games. This can help you get across, and this is yet another example of getting around board stalls, and that seems to be the theme that we're seeing more and more in Fate Reforged, and definitely under blue. There's just so many different ways to get out of a board stall situation that it was obvious that was an issue with the cons environment. So it's kind of cool to see cards like this out there. And finally, last card is Right into Being. It's 1 blue, 2 colorless. It's a sorcery. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, manifest one of those cards, then put the other on the top or bottom of your library. So this is a great card. It is a sorcery. It's not an instant, so you want to keep that in mind. But you're able to look at the top 2 cards, manifest one of those 2. So hopefully you pull a creature that may give you some added value, and then you're scrying the second card. So it's a little bit of dig. It gives you a creature, very strong. Definitely something you're going to want to use it limited. So having said that, that's the end of the blue cards. We'll be hopefully getting the black cards out and getting that video out by tomorrow, or if not sooner. So thanks a lot, and have a great day.